Well, hello, King Jehoshaphat. It is me, King Ahab. And
Oi,
I was wondering if you'd maybe like to bring your army and my army, and we can go and claim back the land that our people lost many years ago.
sounds like a good idea. We first need to go and seek counsel from the wise men.
That's a very good point. So you want to go to war? Yeah, it'll be fine. You don't have to worry about it. You'll win. Yes, Ahab, you can go to war. You're gonna win. Hello, King Ahab. It is me. And you want to go to war? I think you'll win. You must go out to war. I think that's a good idea.
Okay, so those were your spiritual advisors. What about God's spiritual advisors?
There is one guy. His name is Mackay. But I don't like Mackay. He never gives me good news. He always tells me bad things.
Well, go and call him.
Well, let me tell you the story. You see, King Ahab, there was this dude who wanted to mess with you. So he went to the Lord and said, I want to deal with King Ahab. And so the Lord allowed all the spiritual advisors to be led astray. Because the truth of the matter is, you, if you go to war, will die.
What did you do to Mackay?
Well, I put him in prison and he's only allowed to eat bread and water until I come back safely from battle.
Are you still going into battle?
Yes, but I have a plan. They will never know what the plan is.
And what shall that be?
So I'm going to go onto the battlefield, not dressed as the king. Somebody else is going to go dressed as the king on the front line of the battle. So they'll all be aiming for him. But I'm going to go on the back like I'm just a normal guy with a bow and arrow. And they'll never know it's me.
How could that possibly go wrong?
Boys and girls, and welcome to another episode of Dodos of the Bible. Today's Dodo is a man by the name of Ahab. Now, Ahab was a dodo who thought he was far smarter and far wiser than God. You see, as we discussed in our story a little bit earlier, Ahab is warned by the prophet Mackay that if he goes into battle, that he will end up dead. But Ahab thinks he knows better, so he hatches a plan and he sends Jehoshaphat out in his place. Now, the king of Syria, who is going to war against the nation of Judah and the nation of Israel, says to soldiers, leave everyone else behind, whether they're big or small, and focus on the king. Now what happens is, as they charge into battle, Jehoshaphat draws his bow and arrow and lets out a scream, and at this they realize that this is not the king of Israel. Whoa, let's just quickly pause there. You see, Proverbs chapter 9 verses 10 tells us that the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. So if you want to be a good king and not a dodo, maybe you should be wise, and maybe somebody should have told Ahab that. Now, Ahab had a lot of responsibilities to fulfill as the king. In Deuteronomy chapter 17 verses 18 to 20, it is a passage about the responsibilities of a king. A king is supposed to fear the Lord, a king is supposed to obey the laws, and the king is not to consider himself greater than anyone else in his kingdom. And he should keep these three important things close to his heart. However, Ahab did not do so. Now, things started going downhill for Ahab in the previous chapter. Before he plans to go into battle, our friend Ahab finds a vineyard. And not just any vineyard, but a beautiful vineyard belonging to a man called Naboth. And he tried his best to buy this vineyard from Naboth. He offered him a lot of things, but Naboth didn't think it was right to sell it. And when Ahab finds out about this, he is grumpy. He almost does the same thing as Elijah. Like he goes and can't get up and he just sleeps. And eventually his wife says, can I sort this out? Her name is Jezebel. And Jezebel planned on his behalf to put Naboth to death. And when Elijah found out that the king of Israel, God's king, had the blood of a man on his hands, he was very angry. And he goes and he confronts Ahab. And he essentially tells Ahab that he has done evil in the eyes of the Lord. And because of that, there is a punishment coming his way. There will be a curse on Ahab and his family. And a long story short, the Lord is going to punish him. Now, this sounds a bit similar because a little bit later on in our passage, we learn that Micaiah says a very similar thing. If you go into battle, you will lose because the Lord has punished you. And and if you go into battle, you will lose because the Lord is allowing you to be punished and you'll be put to your death. And that seems to happen. And Ahab, still like a dodo, decides that he knows better than God, and he goes into battle. Back to the video. So during the short battle, we see that when the people realize that it is not Ahab that is leading the charge, they head back. But before that happens, one of the soldiers lashes out and strikes another one of the soldiers on Israel's side in his armor between two pieces. And this soldier is wounded very badly. And this soldier is Ahab. A fatal blow was dealt to Ahab, and ultimately nothing he could do could save his life. And the prophecies made by Micaiah about how Ahab would die came true. Now, the moral of the story today, boys and girls, is that Ahab did not like Micaiah, and he wasn't a big fan of Elijah because he felt that they were out to get him. But if he had listened to the instruction of the prophets of God, things might have been very different for him. He was not the worst king that Israel had ever had. In fact, he was very similar to King Saul. If he had followed God's instructions in the first place, things would have been very different. But ultimately, his self-centered living was what resulted in him being put to death. And you see, we have that same problem as well. We have a selfishness within us that doesn't want to follow and obey God. And this is sin. But thanks to Jesus Christ dying on the cross, he took our sin and paid for it once and for all. The Bible tells us in Romans chapter 3 verses 23 that all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God, but are freely justified through Jesus Christ dying on the cross. This, boys and girls, is where we're going to end today's Dodo, and we'll catch you not next week Friday, but the following week Friday for another episode of Dodos of the Bible.